My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 29 years old, and the night my fiancé told me people only invited me because of him, he said it like he was doing me a favor by finally being honest. We were sitting in his car in the parking lot outside our apartment building, the engine still running, the dashboard lights casting a cold blue glow across his face. His fingers tapped the steering wheel in that impatient rhythm I had come to recognize over the last 2 years, the one that usually meant he had already decided he was right before I even answered. "You barely said 10 words all night," he said. "Do you know how awkward that is for me?" I stared at the windshield, at the blurred reflection of the parking lot lights trembling across the glass. I could still smell his cologne mixed with wine and restaurant smoke. "I didn't have anything to add to that conversation," I said. That should have been a normal answer. But Ryan turned toward me with that expression I knew too well. Not anger, not even obvious cruelty, just polished certainty, the kind that made every cutting thing sound practical. "That's the problem, Elena," he said. "You never do." His name was Ryan Calloway. When I met him, I thought he was the kind of man who could walk into any room and make the room rearrange itself around him. He knew bartenders by name, remembered birthdays without checking his phone, and could turn a 5-minute conversation with a stranger into an invitation for drinks the next weekend. People leaned in when he spoke. They laughed faster around him. He carried himself like belonging came naturally. I was never like that. I'm not rude, I'm not withdrawn. I've just never confused noise with connection. I would rather sit with 3 people and have one real conversation than spend an evening moving through polished smiles in a crowded room. I listen. I remember things. I notice details. But I've never enjoyed performing just to prove I belong. At first, Ryan said that was what he loved about me. "You calm me down," he told me once, early on, when everything still felt soft. "You make things feel real." Back then, I believed him. I met him when I was 27. He made life feel bigger. That was the first spell. He pulled me toward places I wouldn't have chosen on my own. Rooftop dinners, birthday parties, work events, polished apartments full of people who all seemed certain of themselves. I thought maybe this was part of love. Maybe the right person expanded your world. For a while, it felt that way. He pulled me into his social life. I steadied him when he got overwhelmed. He liked being admired. I liked being chosen. He liked being seen. I liked feeling needed. We moved in together after a year, and a few months later, he proposed. From the outside, we probably looked balanced. He was expressive, social, impossible to ignore. I was quieter, calmer, harder to read unless someone was really paying attention. People said I softened him. He said I grounded him. But the cracks had already started. They just didn't look like cracks at first. They looked like jokes. "Good thing I dragged you out tonight," he would say with a laugh, one hand at the small of my back. "Otherwise, you'd still be home in pajamas." Or, "People wouldn't even know you exist if I didn't introduce you around." Everyone would smile. Sometimes I smiled too. Because that's the thing about humiliation wrapped in charm. If it comes with a grin, if it sounds playful enough, you can spend a long time wondering whether the wound is real or whether you're just too sensitive to take a joke. Over time, the jokes became habits. Then the habits became narratives. Ryan started talking about me as if I only existed socially because he brought me into rooms. "You'd never come to things like this without me. You don't know how to work a room. People like you because you're with me. That's just reality." If I looked hurt, he would sigh and tell me not to take everything so personally. If I got quiet, he would act as if I were proving his point. So I did what a lot of women do when they're trying to protect a relationship that is already starting to bruise them. I adjusted. I tried to be easier, brighter, more outwardly grateful. About 4 months before everything broke open, we were getting ready for one of his coworkers' birthday parties. I was in front of the bathroom mirror, fastening an earring, when Ryan leaned in the doorway, already dressed, already impatient. "You should make more of an effort to talk to people tonight," he said. I looked at him through the mirror. "I do talk to people. Not enough." His tone stayed flat, matter of fact. Somehow that made it worse. "I don't want them thinking I dragged along dead weight." For a second, I thought I had misheard him. I turned slowly. "Dead weight?" He exhaled, annoyed that I was focusing on the wording instead of the lesson. "You know what I mean. You stand there with one drink all night. People notice." "Then don't bring me." He gave a humorless laugh. "I can't show up alone. That looks worse. Just try to be more engaged, okay?" So I went. I always went. That night I smiled. I asked his coworkers about their projects. I laughed where it made sense. I listened to stories about office politics, promotions, vacation plans, and people I barely knew. I stayed warm, present, easy. And still, every time I glanced at Ryan, I could see it in his face. It wasn't enough. I wasn't the kind of woman he wanted beside him. Not because I was rude, not because I was cold, just because I wasn't dazzling. The breaking point came 2 weeks before he called me forgettable. We had been invited to a dinner hosted by one of his closest friends, Rebecca, 8 couples, a private room in a polished restaurant. Candlelight, low music. The kind of evening where everyone took turns proving their lives were interesting enough to deserve attention. Ryan loved those rooms. He sat straighter in them, spoke faster, smiled more. He was good at becoming the center of gravity without seeming desperate for it. I was quiet most of the evening, not because I was intimidated, not because I was unhappy. I just had nothing to add to conversations about yacht weekends, corporate politics, and destination weddings that cost more than my first car. I asked Rebecca about the pottery class she had mentioned the last time I saw her. I asked one of Ryan's friends how his interview had gone. I listened. I responded. I existed normally. Across the table, Ryan kept shooting me those small, sharp glances. Say more. Do more. Stop making me look bad. The drive home felt full of static. The moment he parked in our apartment complex, he turned toward me. That was painful, he said. I stared at him. What was? You barely contributed. I contributed when I had something to say. That's exactly it, he snapped. You never do. Something in me went very still. How does my being quiet make you so angry? He turned fully in his seat, one arm hooked over the steering wheel, and looked at me as if I were forcing him to say something unfortunate but true. Because people only invite you because of me, he said. They don't actually want you there. They tolerate you because you're with me. For a moment, everything in the car seemed to go silent. Then he said the line that sat in my chest for days like broken glass. On your own, Elena, you're forgettable. Forgettable. He didn't shout it. He didn't throw it at me in anger. He said it calmly, almost casually, like he had been carrying that thought around for months and had finally decided I was ready to hear it. I looked at him for a long second. Then I said very quietly, good to know. His expression changed immediately, not softer exactly, but defensive. I'm not trying to be mean. No, I'm being realistic. He leaned back in his seat. Someone has to be. I opened the car door. Behind me, his voice came fast and sharp. You need to hear this. If you want people to actually enjoy having you around, you need to make more effort. You need to stop hiding behind being quiet. I got out without answering. He followed me into the building, still talking, still dressing cruelty up as advice. Social strategies, personality adjustments, tiny renovations I could apparently make to become a more acceptable version of myself. I didn't fight him. That seemed to bother him most. Inside the apartment, I took off my shoes, set my bag down, washed my face, and changed into pajamas. Ryan moved around behind me, opening drawers, plugging in his phone, sighing loudly, performing his frustration for an audience of one. When we got into bed, he lay beside me in the dark and said, Don't be dramatic. I'm just telling you what people see. I kept my back to him, but I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the refrigerator hum in the kitchen, the faint ticking in the walls, the even rhythm of his breathing as he drifted off beside me like he had done something helpful. And I kept hearing it. People only invite you because of me. On your own, you're forgettable. The worst part was not how cruel it sounded. The worst part was how precisely it landed, because some part of me had already been weakened enough to believe him. Over the last 2 years, Ryan had repeated his version of me so many times that I had started mistaking it for reality. He framed himself as the reason I belonged in rooms, the reason I got included, the reason anyone noticed me at all. And because he said it often enough, with enough confidence, I had started absorbing it without realizing I was doing it. By morning, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I was clear. If people really only invited me because of Ryan, then there was a simple way to test it. I would stop going. That week, he had 3 plans on the calendar. Wednesday drinks with his work friends. Friday dinner with Rebecca again. Saturday brunch with his college circle, the group he saw most often, the group he treated like living proof of the life he had built. Normally, I would have gone to all 3. I would have put on something soft and flattering, stood beside him in another curated room, smiled at the right moments, and tried not to feel myself being measured against some brighter, louder version of femininity I had never wanted to become. But something in me had shifted. I was tired of helping him narrate me. The next morning, he was in the kitchen making coffee when I walked in. Sunlight spread across the counter. The apartment looked ordinary, too ordinary for the sentence he had lodged in me the night before. He glanced at me, like he expected the tension to have settled by now, like unpleasant truths became acceptable after one night of sleep. I poured myself a glass of water. He set down his mug, and standing there in the quiet with the whole week in front of us, I made the decision that would begin unraveling everything between us. Let him go alone. Let the room notice. Let the truth arrive without me saying a word. And then, for the first time, I actually tested it. The first time I said no, it felt smaller than I expected. It was Wednesday morning. Ryan was buttoning his shirt in front of the mirror, talking half to himself, half to me. "Drinks tonight," he said. "You're coming, right? It's just the usual group." I was sitting at the edge of the bed, tying my hair back. "No," I said. He paused, one hand still at his collar. "No? I'm staying in tonight." A brief silence passed between us. Just enough for something subtle to shift. "Still upset about this other night?" he asked. "I'm not upset," I said. "I just don't want to go." He watched me for a second, as if trying to decide whether this was a mood or a problem. "You should come," he said. "It'll be good for you." I met his eyes in the mirror. "You said people only invite me because of you," I replied calmly, "so it shouldn't make a difference if I'm not there." Something flickered across his face. Annoyance first. Then something less certain. "That's not what I meant," he said. "It sounded like that's what you meant." He exhaled sharply, grabbed his jacket, and pulled it on with more force than necessary. "Fine," he said. "Do whatever you want." The door shut behind him a little too hard. I sat there for a moment after he left, listening to the apartment settle back into silence. There was no rush of triumph, no dramatic relief, just a steady kind of calm. That night, I made dinner for myself. Pasta with garlic and olive oil. I ate at the kitchen counter instead of in front of the television. I didn't check my phone every 5 minutes. I didn't imagine the room I wasn't in. I just existed in my own space. Ryan came home later than usual. I heard the front door open, the quiet scrape of his shoes, the clink of his keys landing in the bowl by the door. He walked into the kitchen, loosened his collar, and poured himself a drink before he looked at me. "How was it?" I asked. "Fine." One flat word. I nodded. "Good." He glanced at me like he was waiting for more. Questions. Curiosity. Some sign that I still felt excluded from something important. I gave him nothing. He took a sip of his drink. "People asked where you were." "Did they?" "Yeah." "What did you tell them?" "That you weren't feeling well." I looked at him. "I'm not sick." He shrugged. It was easier than explaining. Explaining what? That I had chosen not to come? That maybe his version of me didn't hold up as well without me there? I didn't press. This wasn't an argument. It was an observation. Friday came faster than I expected. Dinner with Rebecca again. Ryan brought it up over breakfast, casually, as if the tension between us had already resolved itself somewhere I hadn't noticed. "Rebecca confirmed for Friday," he said. 7 o'clock. I stirred my coffee slowly. "I'm not going," I said. This time he didn't pause. He set down his fork and looked at me directly. "Elena, don't start this again." "I'm not starting anything." "Yes, you are." His voice sharpened. "You're proving my point." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "By hiding," he said. "By avoiding situations where you'd have to actually engage." I let out a quiet breath. "I'm not hiding. I'm just not going where I'm not wanted." "That's not true." "That's what you told me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a second, I thought he might apologize. He didn't. "You're taking it too literally," he said instead. "I'm taking it exactly how you said it." Silence stretched across the table. He pushed his plate away. "Fine," he said, but this time the words sounded thinner. "Stay home. See if anyone notices." I held his gaze. "That's the plan." That night, I didn't stay in the apartment. I went out alone. Not to one of his places. Not to one of his circles. Just to a small cafe a few blocks away that stayed open late. The kind with soft lighting and low voices where people read, worked, or sat alone without explanation. I ordered tea and took a seat by the window. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel measured. I didn't feel pre-corrected before I had even spoken. I just felt present. My phone buzzed once. A message from Rebecca. "Hey, are you okay? We missed you tonight." I stared at the screen for a long second. Missed you. Not asked about you because of him. Not wondered where Ryan's fiancé was. Missed you. I didn't answer right away. I locked my phone and set it beside my cup. Across the street, a couple laughed under the streetlights. Inside the cafe, someone turned a page. The room kept breathing around me. And for the first time, I let myself consider the possibility that Ryan might not be as accurate about me as he believed. He came home earlier than he had on Wednesday. I was already back, curled up on the couch with a book. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He hovered for a moment like he didn't quite know where to stand. "It was quiet," he said finally. "Dinner?" "Yeah." I marked my page. "Quiet how?" He hesitated. "Just different." I nodded once. "People asked about you again." I looked at him this time. "What did you tell them?" "That you had other plans." "That's true." Another pause. Then, more quietly, Rebecca texted you, didn't she? Yes. What did you say? Nothing yet. He studied my face as if searching for something specific. I didn't give him anything to hold. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Brunch day. His favorite group. The one he never missed. He got dressed more slowly this time. Kept glancing at me as if he expected me to change my mind at the last minute. I didn't. You're really not coming? He asked, standing by the door. No. He lingered for a second longer, then nodded once and left. The apartment fell quiet again. I stood there for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not anger, not sadness. Something steadier than both. A little after noon, my phone lit up. A message from Ryan. Running late, we're still here. I looked at it, then set the phone down without replying. An hour later, I heard his key in the door. He walked in differently this time. Quieter. Not irritated, not smug, not defensive. Just off balance. I was at the kitchen counter slicing strawberries when he dropped his keys into the bowl and stood there without speaking. How was brunch? I asked. There was a beat. Then another. Fine, he said. But it didn't sound fine. I set the knife down and turned to face him. He looked unsettled, like he had walked into a room expecting the furniture in its usual place and found everything moved. What happened? I asked. Nothing. That automatic answer again. Ryan. Something in my voice made him exhale and run a hand through his hair. They asked about you, he said. I know. You said they probably would. Not casually. He looked away for a second. They kept bringing you up. My chest tightened slightly. What do you mean? He moved farther into the apartment, like he needed distance from the doorway to say the rest. Rebecca asked why you hadn't answered her message. Mark said it felt weird without you there. Then Daniel pulled me aside. That made me still. Daniel was the one person in that group Ryan actually listened to. The one who never laughed, just to fill silence. What did he say? Ryan hesitated. He asked if everything was okay between us. And what did you say? That it was. I held his gaze. Was it? His jaw tightened. That's not the point. What is the point? He looked down for a second, then back at me. He said it didn't feel like it, Ryan answered. Why? He gave a short, humorless laugh. Because you weren't there, he said. And apparently that matters more than I thought. The words hung between us. And? I asked quietly. He said the group feels different when you're not around. Ryan swallowed. Less grounded. Grounded. That word echoed in the room. I didn't say anything. Ryan kept going, as if stopping would make it worse. He said people actually talk to you, not just surface stuff, real conversations. He said when you're there, things feel more balanced. I stayed very still. Not because I didn't understand, because I did. And that's not all, Ryan added. I waited. He said people don't invite you because of me. Ryan's voice had dropped by then. He said sometimes they invite me because of you. The room went completely still. I didn't react right away. I couldn't, because it didn't feel like winning. It felt like something splitting open. I told him that didn't make sense, Ryan said quickly. I told him you barely talk at these things, that you keep to yourself. And what did he say? Ryan looked at me, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen before. Shame. He said that's exactly why people like you, Ryan answered. Because you listen. Because you remember things. Because when you do talk, it matters. My fingers curled around the edge of the counter. He said people feel seen around you. Seen. Not tolerated. Not carried. Seen. Rebecca said the same thing, Ryan added more quietly. She said you're one of the only people who asks follow-up questions and actually cares about the answers. Something tightened in my chest, because I knew that was true. Not in a dramatic way. Just in a simple one. That's just how I am, I said. I know, Ryan said too quickly. Silence settled again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that had been building for months, for years. I looked at him carefully. What else did Daniel say? Ryan hesitated. Then, almost reluctantly, he said I might not realize it, but sometimes I need to be the most interesting person in the room. I didn't respond. He said when you're there, it's easier for everyone to relax, because not everything has to revolve around me. For so long, Ryan had framed me as the one who depended on him to belong in those spaces. Now the truth was turning itself inside out. You told me I was forgettable, I said quietly. He flinched. I didn't mean it like that. You said it exactly like that. He dragged a hand over his face. I was frustrated. That doesn't make it less true. His voice dropped. It's not true. I held his gaze. Then why did you believe it long enough to say it? That question stayed in the air. Unanswered. Unavoidable. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. Because there wasn't a clean answer. Not yet. I picked the knife back up even though I wasn't hungry anymore. Behind me, Ryan stayed still. For once, he didn't try to fix the moment. He didn't reframe it. He didn't soften it. Because something had shifted. Not just in what he saw, in what I understood. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't questioning my place in the room. I was questioning why I had ever let someone else define it for me. After that conversation, nothing exploded. That was the strange part. There was no dramatic fight, no shouting, no doors slammed hard enough to feel like decisions. Just a shift. Quiet, subtle, irreversible. Ryan tried to act normal. He made coffee in the mornings, asked about my day, sent the same casual texts in the afternoon. Did you eat? I might be late. Want to order in tonight? On the surface, everything looked the same. Underneath, nothing was. The first real change didn't come from him. It came from his friends. 3 days after brunch, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A message from Rebecca. Hey, I'm hosting a small dinner Friday. I'd love for you to come. Just you, if you're free. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Just you. Not you and Ryan. Not bring Ryan if he's free. Just me, I typed back. I'd love to, thank you. I didn't tell Ryan right away. Not because I was hiding it, because I wanted to understand what it meant before I placed it between us. Friday evening came. For the first time in 2 years, I got ready to go somewhere without checking what Ryan was wearing. Without asking if I matched the room he had already chosen. I chose something simple. When I walked into the living room, he looked up. You look nice, he said automatically. Thanks. A pause. Ready? He asked, standing. I'm going alone, I said. He froze. What? Rebecca invited me. Just me. The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it was heavy. He searched my face, trying to make it make sense. She didn't invite me? I'm sure she assumed you had other plans. Not entirely true. Not entirely false. Ryan let out a breath that sounded like disbelief held in place. Right, he said. Of course. I picked up my bag. I'll be back later. He nodded, but he didn't move. Didn't say anything else. He just stood there, watching me walk out like something was slipping through his hands, and he didn't know how to stop it. Rebecca's dinner felt different, not because of the room. The room was the same. Soft lighting, familiar faces, low music, the quiet clink of glasses. But the way people looked at me was different. Warmer. Direct. Hey, you made it, Rebecca said, pulling me into a quick hug. I'm glad you came. Me too, I said. And I meant it. I moved through the evening the way I always had. Listening. Asking questions, letting conversations unfold instead of forcing myself into them. But something had changed. People leaned toward me more, stayed longer, laughed genuinely, not politely. At one point, Mark sat down beside me and said, It's good to have you back. It felt weird last weekend. Weird. Not incomplete. Not awkward. Weird. Like something familiar had gone missing. I smiled slightly. I heard. He shook his head. Ryan was a lot. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't standing next to Ryan while someone said it. I was standing on my own and hearing it clearly. Later, Rebecca leaned closer. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you okay? I held her gaze. Yes, I said. And for the first time in a long time, that answer didn't feel like something I was saying to protect someone else. It felt true. When I got home, Ryan was on the couch. The TV was on, but muted. He looked up the moment I walked in. How was it? He asked. Good. Yeah? I nodded. It was nice. He studied my face, searching. For you? He asked. Yes. That seemed to land harder than anything else. He leaned back slightly, like he needed distance from that answer. They didn't ask about me? They did. And? I said you were busy. He nodded slowly. Right. Silence stretched. They invited you directly, he said. Yes. That's new? Yes. He looked away first. That was new too. Over the next few weeks, it kept happening. Messages. Invitations. Direct, clear. Game nights. Dinners. A book club Rebecca insisted I would enjoy. Each time I went. Not to prove anything. Not to make a point. Just because I wanted to. And each time I left the apartment alone, I could feel Ryan watching. Not angry. Not accusing. Uncertain. The balance had shifted. And he could feel it. He just didn't know what to do with it yet. One night, after I got back from a small gathering, he was waiting in the kitchen. Not sitting. Not distracted. Waiting. Can we talk? He asked. Okay. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of me. I feel like something's changing, he said. It is. That answer came easily. Too easily. He flinched. I didn't mean for it to turn into this, he said. Into what? This, he repeated, gesturing between us. You going out without me. People reaching out to you instead of through me. He stopped, because the sentence didn't finish well. It's what? I asked. He hesitated. Then, quieter. It's not how it used to be. No, it wasn't. Before, I stood beside him. Now I stood on my own. And the distance between those two things was bigger than he had ever understood. You told me I was forgettable, I said. His jaw tightened. I said that because I was frustrated. And now? He didn't answer right away, because now the evidence didn't support what he had said. They're inviting you, he said finally. Yes. They're choosing you. Yes. That word settled between us. Heavy, unavoidable. He looked at me like he was seeing something that had always been there, just never acknowledged. I didn't realize, he said quietly. I know. That was the part that hurt most. Not what he said, but that he had believed it for so long. Long enough to make me question myself. Long enough to make me smaller. Long enough to make me forget what I already was. A few days later, he came home early and found me at the dining table answering emails. I booked a session, he said. I looked up. With who? A therapist. The word hung in the air. He looked serious, not defensive, not performative. I think I need to understand why I do that, he said. Do what? He met my eyes. Make you feel small. The honesty of that landed harder than anything else he had said in weeks. Yes, I said quietly. You do. He nodded once, like he had forced himself to stop looking away from it. I thought I was helping, pushing you. You weren't pushing me, I said. You were rewriting me. That hit. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped slightly. I know that now, he said. Silence settled between us. I don't want to lose you, he added. There it was. Not the social version of us. Not the polished couple. Just him. And the possibility that what he had broken might not be fixable. I'm still here, I said. It wasn't reassurance. It was just the truth. He started therapy the following week. To his credit, he tried. He stopped correcting me in front of people. He caught himself when he interrupted. He started asking questions and waiting for the answers. From the outside, it looked like progress. From the inside, it felt different, because change doesn't erase memory. It doesn't remove the moment something breaks. It just builds something new beside it. And I wasn't sure I wanted something new with him. I kept going to the dinners, the book club, the game nights. One night after book club, Rebecca said, "You seem lighter." I feel lighter, I admitted. She studied me for a moment. Are you two okay? I didn't answer right away, because the truth wasn't simple. We're trying, I said. She nodded slowly. That's something. It was. But it wasn't everything. At home, the conversations with Ryan became quieter, more careful. Until one night, they didn't stay careful anymore. We had both come back late, me from dinner, him from a work event. We ended up in the kitchen at the same time. He looked tired. I think I was jealous, he said suddenly. I frowned. Of what? You. That doesn't make sense. I know, he said quickly. It didn't make sense to me either. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. But I think I needed to be the most interesting person in the room, he said. And you didn't need that. People liked you for being you. You didn't have to perform for it. I didn't speak. I thought if people liked you that easily, then what I brought wouldn't matter as much, he added. The honesty was uncomfortable. Not because it was shocking, because it made too much sense. So you made me smaller, I said. He nodded. I didn't realize I was doing it, but yes. Silence stretched between us. And now? I asked. He looked at me. I don't want to be that person anymore. I believed him. That was the hardest part, because belief didn't automatically rebuild trust. I'm glad, I said. He stepped a little closer. Is that enough? There it was, the real question. Not about therapy, not about progress, about us. I held his gaze. And for the first time, I didn't rush to protect the relationship. I don't know, I said. The words landed heavily because they were true. The thing about damage like this is that it doesn't come from one sentence. It comes from repetition, from the quiet erosion of how you see yourself, from trusting someone else's voice more than your own. Ryan had started to change, but the version of me that had lived under his version of me didn't disappear overnight. She had to be unlearned, rebuilt, reclaimed. And I didn't know if I could do that while staying in the same place where it had been taken from me. It didn't end in a fight. That's what people expect when something breaks. A loud night, raised voices, doors slamming hard enough to feel like decisions. But that's not how this ended. It ended slowly, quietly, like something that had already been decided before either of us said it aloud. It was a Sunday afternoon. Late light stretched across the living room floor, catching on the edges of things we had chosen together. The couch, the framed photos, the small pieces of a life that had once felt shared. Ryan sat across from me, present, fully present. I've been thinking, he said. I know, I said, me too. That was all it took. No build-up, no pretending. Just two people finally stepping into the same truth at the same time. I don't think we can fix this, he said. The words didn't hit like a shock. They settled. I know, I said. He let out a breath. I wish I had seen it earlier. So do I. Silence moved between us. Not empty, just honest. I didn't understand what I was doing, he said. Not fully. I believe you. And now that I do, I don't know how to undo it. You can't, I said gently. That wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. The engagement ended that day. No dramatic speech, no ring thrown across the room. I slid the ring off my finger and placed it on the coffee table between us. Not as a performance. As a conclusion. Ryan looked at it for a long time, then nodded. Like he understood what it meant. Like he understood that some foundations crack too deeply to hold. We didn't drag it out after that. That was the one thing we did right at the end. No cycles, no false restarts. He found a smaller apartment closer to his office. He moved out within a few weeks. I think I need to start over, he said when he told me. I think you do, I replied. There was no bitterness in it, just truth. After he moved out, the apartment felt different. Larger, lighter, not empty, just mine. For the first few days, I kept expecting something to feel missing. A sound, a presence, a version of life I had grown used to. But what I felt instead was quiet, real quiet. Not the kind that feels like absence, the kind that feels like space. The messages didn't stop. Rebecca, Mark, the group, dinner invitations, book club, game nights. But now there was no shadow of someone else's presence behind mine. Just my name. Clear, direct, wanted. One night at Rebecca's table, I found myself in the middle of a conversation I hadn't tried to enter. I wasn't performing. I wasn't adjusting. I wasn't measuring myself against anything. I was just there, listening, speaking when it felt natural, laughing when something was actually funny. And for the first time, I noticed something simple. People leaned in when I spoke. Not because I was louder, not because I demanded attention, but because I didn't. Because when I said something, it meant something. I saw Ryan once after everything ended, by accident, at a coffee shop near my office. He looked different. Not worse. Not better. Just less polished. Less certain. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a moment, two people who had known each other deeply and no longer belonged in each other's lives. How are you? He asked. I'm good. I meant it. He nodded. I'm working on things. I know. A small pause. I'm sorry, he said. I held his gaze. I know. And I did. But apology and outcome are not the same thing. He gave a small nod. Take care, Elena. You too. And that was it. No lingering. No unfinished business. Just an ending that had already happened. The strangest part of all of it wasn't that he had been wrong about me. It was that I had believed him long enough to forget what I already knew. I'm not the loudest person in the room. I'm not the easiest to notice at first. But I was never forgettable. I was quiet in a way that required the right kind of attention. And the people who mattered had always seen me. I just had to learn to see myself again.